Hello, weirdos and nerds of the internet. Today, we're going to be talking about the interesting, lost, mysterious locations iceberg. We're on part 2 now. So if you didn't know already, the interesting, lost, mysterious locations iceberg is basically this chart that has a whole bunch of really random and weird stuff on it. Mainly mysterious or lost locations, lost civilizations. Last time we talked about things like Pompeii, the city of El Dorado, the Holy Grail locations, but today we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of topics, I think over like 35 or so, but it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you guys like weird stuff just like me, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. So starting out in tier 2, we have US Route 50 in Nevada is the top left. US Route 50 is the highway that runs from Maryland all the way to California, and it usually runs right through the middle of a whole bunch of states. But whenever you get towards the western states, it starts to pass through a bunch of really desolate and remote areas where there's not really many major population centers. Specifically, the part of the route that goes through Nevada is extremely desolate. In the state of Nevada, it's really long. It's about 409 miles long, and it's known as the loneliest road in America because it's so desolate due to several large deserts and valleys and basins that you have to go through, which makes it kind of dangerous. Life magazine actually warned readers not to risk traveling through this area unless you have survival skills or some sort of survival ability at all. People will even say they go hundreds of miles without passing a single person or vehicle, so it really is out there. Some even go as far as making survival guides or manuals for driving this road. A lot of people saying they actually take multiple gallons of water, and yeah, it's pretty desolate, it's pretty lonely, crazy place. Next is Doorway to Hell. So the Doorway to Hell is like this huge crater that's in the earth that's constantly burning. Not much is known to how this burning canyon started to burn, but there's a popular theory about how some Soviet engineers were working in Turkmenistan, that's where it's located, where they were trying to drill for oil when they accidentally collapsed this hole in on itself, and then they were afraid gases were going to release that were poisonous, so they just went ahead and lit that on fire. Big brain move. Pretty reasonable thing to think to do. This hole was filled with natural gas, and so they think it was way back in 1971, and so these engineers expected this hole just to burn out and burn off the gases for only a few days. Instead, this hole has been burning ever since the 1970s, or maybe even earlier. So that's for the past 53 years. So yeah, that's it. It's a gas crater. Basically a huge hole burning natural gas. Recently, National Geographic actually revealed that they had found unusual life forms thriving in inhospitable conditions inside the crater. So these things are microorganisms that are really well adapted to life in extremely high temperatures, and they thrive on things with low nutrients. Other weird things about the pit is that sometimes spiders will crawl directly into the fire at night and sacrifice themselves to it. So there's actually other places that are pretty similar to this, like the coal mine that's in the US in Centralia. This is in Pennsylvania, and it's been burning since 1962. It's a coal mine that I guess was lit on fire, or a fire happened, so it's been burning for the past 62 years. And what's really interesting about this coal mine, not to get off topic, but it's the same coal mine that actually inspired the Silent Hill video games, because, you know, this area is always smoky because this coal mine is constantly producing smoke, and everybody actually abandoned this town in the 1980s, making all the residents basically all move out to where there's only 5 residents nowadays. So it's an abandoned town, super smoky, freaky. Anyways, Doorway to Hell, kind of a mystery, kind of weird. I like it. Moving on. The Tombs of Jesus. So this is basically about how people have found different locations that they claim is the tomb of Jesus, where he was placed after his crucifixion. A lot of people think that the Holy Church of Sepulchre is the main one where they believe it actually happened. So this is a place located in the old city of Israel where they actually built a church on top of the tomb and then enshrouded the tomb. And the history of the Holy Sepulchre is that Constantine the Great actually turned to Christianity, and he tore down the pagan temple that was built right on top of this tomb because I guess maybe the pagans thought it was also the tomb of Jesus. And then he excavated all the way down and found the tomb, and then placed a new Christian church on top of it, which later became the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But you know, others think that it's located in different areas, like the Garden Tomb, which is this rock cutout tomb that was found in Jerusalem in 1867, and it's considered by a lot of Protestants to be the tomb. And it's located adjacent to what a lot of people think is Skull Hill, which is where they believe Christ was crucified. And there's also the Talpiot Tomb, which was found in 1980 in East Jerusalem, which is interesting because we just talked about James Cameron doing the Mariana Trench dive. Anyways, he went to the bottom of the ocean, and he thinks he found the tomb of Jesus. Moving on. There's even some people that believe the tomb of Jesus is actually in Japan, and that Jesus fled there and became a rice farmer, which, no. But the actual tomb is just kind of a mystery. I don't really think we're going to know for sure, but it's cool to speculate about it, you know? I feel like the main two we talked about are pretty reasonable to think that they could possibly be the actual tomb of Jesus. Very large array. So this is like an astronomy observatory that uses these huge dishes that are shaped in a big Y structure to look at things in space. What these things do is they use radio signals to detect huge structures in space and then piece them together. Things like planets, gas giants, or even black holes are things they say this thing can detect. But some people like to theorize that this place is actually trying to contact extraterrestrials, or that they're sending out some sort of code for communication, which leads to a lot of distress because of the dark forest hypothesis, which is a theory that alien life exists, but it is both silent and hostile because it wants to stay undetected out of fear of being destroyed by other civilizations. Terrifying. Oh my gosh. That is such a scary worldview of the universe. Anyways, I could talk about that forever, but we got a lot to cover today. Vatican Secret Archives. So the Vatican Secret Archives is a very real 53 miles of shelving holding 35,000 volumes of catalogs, 12 centuries worth of documents on history, religion, and who knows what. There's a lot of mystery behind the secrets of the archives, but they are absolutely not public. They are actually only accessible by scholars who go through a really large vetting process by the Catholic Church, and then also are over the age of 75. I think that is a terrible requirement. Anyways, they're housed in this huge fortress-like portion of the Vatican, and a lot of people have a whole bunch of conspiracies about the archives, mainly that like the Catholic Church knows about aliens, but then other theories about how like since history is written by the victors, then possibly the Vatican has been keeping other secrets about history and possibly even contradictive stuff to what we have been taught in school. Because why would they keep it a secret unless they are trying to hide some sort of huge controversial statement or documents? I don't know, a lot of people think they have things like secret war crimes or even like mysterious teachings from before the Great Flood or histories of past great civilizations that got reset. Some even think that the Library of Alexandria didn't burn down but was secretly moved there before the fire, which I think there is actually a little bit of claim where you could say that may have happened. But I mean, and I just read this thing that's kind of strange about the Vatican Secret Archives is technically it's not owned by the Catholic Church, but the Pope. I find that very weird. There are a few things we do know about the Vatican Secret Archives. There's things like King Henry the whatevereth, the one who killed a bunch of his wives. He wrote a letter to the Pope and asked for a annulment, I think, on his divorce because he wanted to get a new wife. And the Pope was like, no, and that letter's there in the archives. It's a big historical moment. And then also the 95 Theses that was nailed to the Catholic Church door. I believe that is also in the archives. Or maybe the letter from the church to Martin Luther is in the archives telling him that he's excommunicated. Anyways, there's a bunch of stuff we kind of do know about. Moving on. Next up is Babylon. Babylon is something I've wanted to do research on for a while. I didn't go too in depth on this one, but my gosh, there's so much history of civilizations called Babylon, and then like all the Babylon talk in the Bible. Anyways, Babylon is an ancient city that is thought to have been the first city to ever reach a population of over 200,000 people. It was thought to have been founded at least 4,000 years ago, and it's located in modern-day Iraq on the lower Euphrates River in southern Mesopotamia. And what's interesting, it's actually known for building one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, which are like these ancient things that are mainly gone. I think the Egyptian pyramids are still one of them. But the wonder that they built is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And whenever it was written in history, they called it a remarkable feat of engineering. It was like layers of gardens going up as trusses. It was just like a huge variety of trees, shrubs, vines, and it looked like a giant green mountain of mud and bricks. In biblical history, Babylon is described as an object of horror among the nations. And basically, it represents like enemies of God, and it says that this city is filled with every kind of evil that you can imagine, and that it will be destroyed. This is where in the Old Testament you had the story of the Tower of Babel, where it was said that humans were trying to build a tower to reach the heavens, and God made everybody speak different languages so that they couldn't finish it. In modern day, after the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the US actually built a military base on the ruins of Babylon, which they actually said caused major damage to the archaeological site, so, enter your own conspiracy here. Kind of weird, I don't know why they would do that. Alright, the Island of Dolls. The Island of Dolls is an island in Mexico City, Mexico, where there's a whole bunch of decaying, destroyed dolls that are strung up in trees. It actually has a really dark origin story. So as the story goes, there's this guy named Santana Barrera who was going insane. And so he isolated himself on this island in the mid-1900s. Well, not long after going insane and being there on the island, he discovered a body of a young girl who had drowned in the lake, and it washed up on the shore of the island he was staying at. Shortly after this body washed up, a doll came floating down the canal, and Barrera took this doll and hung it up in a tree in order to appease the spirit of this deceased girl. But for some reason, he didn't think just one doll was enough, so for the next 50 years, Santana Barrera scoured the trashes, the canals for any dolls that he could hang from trees on his island. And not just dolls, he was taking torsos, he was taking arms and legs. And it's worth noting that many people aren't for sure if the girl that washed up on the shore of his island was actually real or if he just imagined it. But what's very strange is in 2001, the doll man himself, the guy who was going insane on the island, was found drowned in the canal in the same place that he said he had seen the little girl. So, sad story, to this day, this place is still a tourist attraction. You can go there and you can see all the dolls hanging there, and I guess people still honor him by hanging up dolls on his island, so that's nice in a way. UVB-76. Also known as the Buzzer, this is a shortwave radio station in Russia that broadcasts a short, monotonous buzzing tone 24 hours a day. And sometimes it also does Russian voices. Little history lesson. During the Cold War, there was these things called number stations where the Russians would send secret messages to operators in the field. Well, not just Russians, but Americans and other countries too. And they used to do it in all kinds of different ways. They would do music, beeps, hums, people counting numbers, and they would use this to encrypt messages that were only decipherable by the people that had the key. A lot of people think that UVB-76 is one of these famous number stations and that it's likely been running since the 1970s, and it's still running today. But people theorize that this number station is still sending out secret codes to people in the field today. But people have other theories too, and they think that this station is like a final effort of communicating in case there's like a huge nuclear war, there would still be a station broadcasting. Or like if a nuclear war broke out, they could identify what places aren't destroyed by seeing that this station is still broadcasting, if you follow me. Either way, it's kind of creepy. A lot of people tried to decipher it online, but I don't really think they have much luck. It's a popular internet thing. Transnistria. This is a country that does not exist, or it's not really recognized as a country, despite having 500,000 people in population. They say their name is actually the Pridnestrovian Moldovan Republic, but it's officially recognized as part of the country of Moldova. Transnistria claims to be the last stronghold for the Soviet Union. Like, they still have a lot of crazy stuff. They got like the hammer and sickle on their flag. They got the communist symbol on their government buildings. This huge statue of Lenin. And also in the theme of communism, they kind of set everything up like a display, like it's not really real. Like, the main drag, their main street is really nice and it's like new looking. But if you just take a few steps off their street, you see a whole bunch of abandoned, destroyed buildings, straight up outhouses from like the 1950s. And there's really just not much opportunity in this country at all. So yeah, it probably is actually the last stronghold for the Soviet Union. JonesTown. So this is really dark. You may not want to watch this. You've probably heard of the JonesTown Massacre. There was an American named Jim Jones who started a cult called the People's Temple. And this cult focused on community, Christianity, allegedly, and then also communism. But really, it was just whatever he said. He did this thing where he would kind of entrap people in his community. Like in San Francisco, I think he had like some camps or some program where he had people there and like people couldn't hardly leave. Several times people tried to escape the compound in San Francisco but were hunted down. And so because of this, they got a bunch of scrutiny from the public. So Jimmy Jones moved his followers to a rural area in South America that became known as JonesTown. And when he was there, Jones started to become increasingly paranoid of like the CIA and other stuff like that. And in 1978, he had over 900 people in his compound in South America. I don't know how he did this. But anyways, some journalists and a congressman actually came to investigate and do like a story on his cult. And Congressman Leo Ryan investigated, and Jones got so paranoid that he had all of them killed before they could leave. And then Jim Jones realized that he couldn't go back on what he did and was going to have to go probably to prison. So he made everybody drink Flavor Aid or Kool-Aid spiked with cyanide. And this is why it's known as a massacre. 918 people died. You might think like, what? How did they all just drink the Kool-Aid? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how cults go. They get completely brainwashed. But then a lot of people also tried really hard not to drink the Kool-Aid, but they were either forced to or, Anyways, a lot of people died. Really sad. Not just people, but entire families. Really weird. Why would you follow this? What is wrong with you guys? Stop it. Really? You really think this is a good guy? I mean, he's trapping people in compounds in San Francisco, and you follow him to South America, and then he makes you drink some really bitter Kool-Aid. You gotta know what's gonna happen. Anyway, moving on. Next is Chicxulub Crater. So this is a 100-mile crater that's right on the edge of the Yucatan Peninsula. There's actually almost no visible crater still there, and you can only tell it's there by specific minerals in a layer. And also all the really cool cenotes. I actually just swam in one. Wait, that's not even the right. I swam in one like a month ago. It was cool in Yucatan. I had no idea that it was from the meteor impact. This asteroid that made this impact crater is thought to have been the greatest mass extinction event ever in history. It was 10 miles across, and it had to have caused extreme devastation to the entire world, if not the galaxy. No, that's not what I meant to say. The entire world. Anyways, yeah, kind of mysterious place. Not really. You never know. You never know what actually happened. That's true. Catacombs of Paris. So, I'm sure everybody knows about the catacombs. There's this huge underground massive graves for people. There's tunnels that stretches 180 miles, but the main burial site only stretches over about a mile. It holds more than 6 million people's remains. So it's kind of weird. Some guy back in the day went in and did all this decorating with the bones and the skulls. He created like a skeleton chair made out of a real skeleton. He displayed like the deformities of people's skulls. It's kind of cool. And then also created these signs that say stuff like, "Stop, this is the realm of the dead." And I don't know, "Abandon hope, ye all that enter here." I don't think it said that, but I'm just guessing. Also, someone created this walker through the wall sculpture. Wow, that thing is nightmare fuel. What's really terrifying about the Catacombs of Paris is a lot of people get lost in it and never find their way out. There was an instance back in 2005 where this girl, a 19-year-old girl, got lost, and she actually wasn't found until 2007. Obviously, she died. But apparently it's a huge, confusing labyrinth. There's actually a really cool movie that I watched. I think it's called As Above, So Below. That's about the Paris catacombs and people going down in there and taking a wrong turn and accidentally traveling into hell, kind of. It's really interesting. It's an interesting concept. I like the concept a lot. The acting was a little subpar, but overall, that's a movie that's worth, if you like stuff that's going to make you really claustrophobic and freaked out about caves and catacombs, that's the one. You're welcome. Micronesia. So this is just an area in Oceania, 2,100 islands, tons of shipwrecks to explore, ancient ruins, sunken basalt temples, and it is home to the only ancient city that is actually built on a coral reef. That is epic. It is said to be the best wreck scuba diving in the world because there's a whole bunch of Japanese warships that were destroyed in World War II, and they got a lot of crazy stuff. They got some tanks under there, and man, I would really love to go. And I guess it's on this list because of all the sunken stuff. Bohemian Grove. So I'm sure you've heard all the conspiracies about Bohemian Grove, and that like a bunch of Illuminati members go there and commit sacrifices to demonic entities. Well, you might be right. We'll talk about it. Bohemian Grove is this huge campsite place in California. A lot of famous and powerful people have been seen there in the past, like Presidents Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon. But what's really weird about the place is all the different weird rituals they have there, and then like the conspiracies surrounding these rituals. There's this really famous video that someone secretly recorded where these guys are all dressed up in robes and they have this huge owl effigy, which I guess is still there. It's a huge stone owl thing, and they refer to the owl as Moloch, which is like this demonic force. Anyways, they burn a fake sacrifice that's like in the shape of a person as a sacrifice to the giant owl effigy. It's all very strange, and like you gotta remember, these people that are there are usually really powerful. They're like the heads of banks, they're CEOs, they might be congressmen, they might be president, probably not, they could be. But some people have theories about them doing these rituals as a way to get forbidden knowledge from evil forces. A lot of people refer to different things in the past doing the same thing, like they theorize that like the Nazis were sacrificing a bunch of people to get forbidden knowledge, and that's why they had such high tech. We're not going to get into that. That stuff's really way out there. Others believe they're just messing around, so all very strange. Moving on. Next is Svalbard Global Sea Vault. So this is a super secluded underground doomsday bunker that basically has backups of seeds and plants and stuff for the entire world. Well, not the entire world, but like a lot of it. They got copies of seeds from pretty much anything they can get their hands on, and some people claim that this building is actually the most important building in the entire world because of, you know, if something happens, it would be really important. They say the reason they created this bunker was in case all plants become extinct from different reasons like war or disease or natural disasters or sabotage from something like Monsanto's Terminator soybean, which was a terrible idea, and they claim they didn't actually do it. The Svalbard Global Sea Vault is so insanely secluded. Like, if you look at it, it's on a tiny island in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, midway between Norway and the North Pole. And then it's also buried 350 feet below ground, so I don't even know what could happen to that thing unless it got hit by a tsunami, which then it probably has like procedures to protect the stuff there. Anyways, Fort Knox. This is a U.S. military base and a place that is said to hold most of the gold reserves for the United States. So everybody should know that back in the day in 1971, the U.S. dollar was backed up by the gold standard, which meant you could exchange gold directly for your dollar. It was directly backed up by it. But in 1971, Richard Nixon made a fiat currency, and that is now our dollar, and it is only backed by the U.S. saying that it's good. Which I will say, that's not the worst thing it could be backed up by. It could be backed up by China saying it's good. So now our dollar is only backed up by the faith and credit of the U.S. government. And I want you to know that anytime the Fed is printing money, it is a direct tax without your consent. So every time they're printing money, it is making your dollar that you have worth less. Anyways, that being said, the US dollar is the standard worldwide for currency. There's this conspiracy that the US actually sold all the gold in the fort. And what's interesting is basically no one in recent decades has been allowed to view the gold reserves. Like even presidents of banks, like huge national banks in Germany were like, hey, we'd like to see our gold that you've been holding for us. And the US was like, no. Sorry about it. You want to ask me why? I don't know. I would probably say anything's possible. They could totally have just done away with their gold, pocketed the money, say they still have it, and then be operating as the fiat currency that they are. But I hope not. It kind of would be stupid because it's like, what are they gaining? Gaining a little bit of money for all that gold. You know it's going to borderline hold its value unless the... Anyways, moving on. Garden of Gethsemane. This is a historical place where Jesus went to pray right before he was taken to be crucified. According to the Bible, this is a place where Jesus was so troubled and distressed about, the whole crucifixion is bad and all, but then also like the entire wrath of God being poured upon him is the worst thing anybody could imagine, that he was deeply grieved to the point of death. So it's possible in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was so distressed that it caused him to literally sweat blood, which is a medical condition called hematidrosis, something like that. Now, the exact location of the Garden of Gethsemane is disputed. There's actually 4 different locations that are officially claimed by different denominations to be the place. The Catholics, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, they all have different places to say which one is, the exact one. But they're all pretty much the same looking. They're all a bunch of olive trees, and, maybe they have it, maybe they don't. It's still a mystery, and that's why it's here on this iceberg. Salar de Uni in Bolivia. So this is this really mystical looking otherworldly place where there's this huge salt flat where sometimes water floods or it just rains a lot, and then this tiny layer of water is sitting right there right at the surface. And so since it's so flat, and if the conditions are exactly right, it looks like a huge sea of glass, and you can't hardly tell the difference between the sky and the ground, and it's really cool looking. This is actually the world's largest salt flat at 4,050 square miles. It used to be this prehistoric lake, but it dried up, and during the rainy season is whenever the water sits there just a few inches, creating this interesting looking glass mystical look. But it's a very rare ecosystem. It harbors pink flamingos, giant cacti, these llama looking things that aren't called llamas, but I can't pronounce them, so I'm not going to say what they were. And also what's interesting is that Bolivia actually has 7% of the world's lithium resources, and Uyuni Salar has most of them, but there are no mines yet. Lost Rono Colony. This is kind of a mystery that has been around for a long time. It was actually one of my favorite mysteries, and then whenever I was doing research for this, I realized that it wasn't really that much of a mystery anymore. To summarize, in 1587, there was this colony of about 117 English settlers that established a settlement on Roanoke Island in present-day North Carolina. The governor of the colony of Roanoke actually went off to England to get supplies, and he came back 3 years later in 1590. When he returned with supplies, the island was deserted and there was no sign of the villagers. But what's weird is there were no bones found like other failed colonies in the New World, and the houses had appeared to have been deconstructed, not destroyed or burned, like looters may have done. And also, the word Croatoan had been carved into a post, and it didn't look like it had been carved in a hurried manner. And before I tell you what actually happened, a lot of people like to point to crazy things like people resorting to cannibalism and then turning into a Wendigo and then wiping out the entire colony because they became a horrific spirited monster thing from a Native American folklore. I like that one a lot. But there's another crazy theory like the Croatoans believed that the people of Roanoke were witches and then came there and they saw them and they were like, they're using black magic. We only use regular. That's not good. We will execute all of them, which is extremely unlikely. But the real reason that I'm almost positive is the actual reason why they disappeared is because the colony of Roanoke had talked with the governor who went off, John White. They told him, hey, we're probably going to move the settlement. If you're gone too long, we're just going to let you know. We're going to carve it into a post. And he was like, okay. He came back, he saw that, and he was like, oh. They went back to Croatoan, which was just a town they had been, well, not a town, but like a little tribe area that they had been at before, and they were friends with the Croatoans. He had to know that they had just gone there, and whatever, some things happened, and John White wasn't able to go to the Croatoan village and get back with his family and his village that he was in charge of, and he went back to England. So yeah, there's literally a village called Croatoan where they had actually, before they went to Roanoke, they had lived there. And so people just believe that they went back there and they assimilated with the native tribe there, which they had strong relationships with previously from living there. And they were like really friendly and stuff, which is pretty cool, you know. Live on an island in Virginia, is that what it was? Virginia and North Carolina, just do whatever. I think it was really cold there though. Ise Grand Shrine is a special shrine because it's the main shrine in Japan, and they have many secret national treasures that they keep there. The most significant of the legendary things that they house there is a sacred mirror that they told a mythological story about. Like, they use this mirror to lure out the sun, or like their sun goddess, from a cave to shine on the land. What's really interesting about this shrine is that it's destroyed every 20 years and then rebuilt. And actually, access to the shrine is strictly limited. Only priests and members of the imperial family have a right to enter it. But you can admire it from behind a fence a ways away. So, there you go, weebs. Snake Island in Brazil is one of Earth's few forbidden islands. What it is it's off the coast of Brazil in the Atlantic Ocean. There's this island which is home to thousands of venomous golden lancehead vipers. Now, an island full of snakes would be less than favorable. Whenever these lancehead vipers bite people, their venom is so fast acting that it melts flesh around where they bite. And it's terrible. I don't know why you would want to go there. There's like 1 to 5 snakes per square meter, so imagine trying to walk around this island and not die, because if you don't get medical attention when you're on a remote island, in 1 hour from getting bit from this thing, you die. So yeah, I see why it's forbidden. These lancehead golden viper things are endangered, so they don't want people to kill them. And also, you can still go there with a special permit, so if you're completely insane, go ahead, go get your flesh melted off by some snakes. Gobekli Tepe is the oldest known temple that we know of that has ever been built. It is a monolithic structure, and historians estimate that it was built between 9500 to 8000 BC in modern-day Turkey. That's a long time ago. A lot of people say that only 10% of this megalithic structure has been uncovered and that they're constantly uncovering new stuff every single day. But yeah, like I said, it's a megalithic structure. It consists of 20 stone rings in this huge area. There's big rectangular rooms, living rooms. They actually found some human remains there that were buried beneath the floors of the rectangular part of the building. But what's really interesting about it is that older parts of the temple were actually more intricately detailed than the newer ones. So it's kind of like Victorian style versus modernism. Aokigahara Forest. This is the famous unalive forest that Logan Paul went to in a YouTube video that one time. This forest is actually a popular hiking destination, and it's only a couple hours from Tokyo, and it's at the base of Mount Fuji. But everybody says to stick to the trails, or you will find stuff you don't want to find. In Japanese mythology, this forest has like a historical reputation of being home to the Yurei, which are like ghosts or spirits of the dead. And the reason they have become ghosts or spirits is because they haven't been correctly buried and had a burial thing. This is also the place that, according to tradition, monks would go and live for 1,000 days without eating anything except for leaves and bark. And then they would try to transform, while they are alive, into a Saku Shinbutsu. I think they actually maybe said that right, which is like a type of mummy. That's what it means, is they self-mummify themselves. There's actually remains of 18 of these Shaku Shinbutsu, which are what people claim are self-mummified monks, and they are still on display in Japan. But scientists are pretty sure that these mummies died and then were mummified. They didn't mummify themselves. So I wish it was real. I mean, it sounds really cool. I'm sorry. But the main popular thing about this forest is it being an unalive forest. If you're wondering why so many people unalive themselves here, there's a few factors. For one, Japan has one of the highest unalive rates in the world, and a lot of people think that's due to pressure of work culture and perfection culture. They just don't feel like they're enough, so they feel lost. And two, the forest has so many incidences because there was this terrible guy who decided to write a very specific unalive manual that I won't name because I don't want to give it attention. But basically the manual lists all the ways you can do it and then says that this forest is the best place to do it. So terrible guy. My gosh, guys, if you're contemplating doing this, just don't. Just give it time. There's always another day, for real. It's not worth it. Moving on, Albanian Bunkers. The Albanian Bunkers are a whole bunch of random bunkers all over Albania. There's like 750,000 of them that were built between 1916 and 1980. The leader of Albania, Enver Hoxha, was a hardcore communist, and he created this government policy that, I kid you not, is called bunkerization. His idea was to build bunkers in every place possible. We're talking beaches, mountains, vineyards, pastures, villages. It was said that even back in the day at this point, even the nicest hotels in the entire country had bunkers in their front lawns. And the reason this guy did this is because he was so paranoid of a Yugoslavian attack on both fronts of his country. And his strategy was basically to have everybody perform guerrilla warfare, and all the citizens were involved. Children were trained from the age of 12 to station themselves in the nearest bunker and then repel invaders in case anything went down. I'll be 100% honest, this sounds really insane, but you got to give it to the guy. It may have worked. If you had 750,000 bunkers, you got a bunch of people in there defending your country. I mean, every single place, I don't even hardly see how they could deal with that, you know? Man, it's almost like America, but not as American. Communism is not American. We're moving on. HAARP Base, HAARP Base. This is the base in Alaska that stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. This was a military base, but it is now a University of Alaska research program. It was created for monitoring weather activity. Now, what's interesting is there's all kinds of really prominent people that came out saying that this place has like hidden capabilities, or they're like controlling the weather, and I thought it was so crazy. I thought it was just a conspiracy whenever I looked at the surface level of it, but like there's some people that really know what they're talking about this. We'll start off with some of the more fringe ones real quick. There was this random Russian military journal that they found that had written that the ionosphere testing would trigger a cascade of electrons that could flip Earth's magnetic poles. I'm not saying that couldn't happen, that the poles couldn't shift, but my gosh, if we actively caused the poles to shift, I don't know. First of all, I don't know why we would do that. And secondly, I really don't think we could cause that. Could we? I haven't researched it enough. Anyways, both Alaska's state legislature and European Parliament held hearings about the HAARP program due to environmental concerns because they were worried that they were going to change the weather. The former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, questioned whether the government was using the site to manipulate the weather or to bombard people with mind-controlling radio waves. You just like me for real? Even a famous physicist, Bernard Eastland, claimed that the HAARP includes technology that was based on his own patents. And he said that the patents that he created were capable of modifying weather and neutralizing satellites. So it seems that whatever they're doing there is a little bit more than monitoring weather. You know, I'm not saying that they're actually controlling people's minds or flipping the magnetic poles, but you know, cloud seeding is real. We can cause it to rain. We have huge machines that can create clouds. Don't be ignorant, guys. A lot of technology that the military has, we have no idea about. It's really no secret that they have stuff that we can't even comprehend at this point. That's just how history has happened. We haven't had any big wars lately, so you know they got that stockpile, and they're going to release it. It's going to be a big drop in the year whenever they have the bad thing happen, which I hope never happens. Anyways, to top it all off with these fringe claims, former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez blamed the 2010 earthquakes in Haiti on HAARP activities. So, oh my gosh, that was a really bad earthquake. This earthquake in Haiti was just concrete buildings with no rebarb, and an earthquake happened and everything was destroyed. So many people lost their lives. And anyways, yeah, I guess a big thing in Venezuela was America is causing worldwide catastrophic events, and this guy was a big believer in that. So, Cat Island in Japan. This is a nice little break from the man-made horrors beyond human comprehension. When I was doing research for this, I realized that there's a bunch of random islands in Japan called Cat Island. So that's nice. The main one is called Aoshima, which is the most well-known one. It is an island in Japan that has 36 the amount of cats that it has people, which it's only like 6. There's only 6 people on the island, so that is more than 210 cats. It actually got so bad recently in like 2018 that they went out and fixed all the cats there. But what's funny is there was this old resident who was like, they're not making my cat sterile, and so they kept 10 of their cats, and so now there's still 10 cats running around the island that aren't fixed. So you better believe that population's going to keep going up. The mystery of Cat Island. There's no mystery. That's it. Statue of Unity. This is the tallest statue in the world. 592 feet high. Oh my gosh, that's so tall. It is in Gujarat, India. It depicts a prime minister who was friends with Gandhi. So apparently he was a really nice guy. Look at this picture of someone next to the toe of the statue. Wow, that's big. What do you want me to say about it? It's weird. It's a giant dude. Gosh dang, that must have taken so long to build. I could look it up and tell you. Look it up yourself. The Nazca lines in Peru. These are giant lines or geoglyphs that are located in southern Peru and South America. These things are really weird. They are so large that people didn't even realize they were even there until they started flying planes over in the 1920s. They believe these geoglyphs were created as old as 500 BC years ago. 500 BC years ago. Big brain. They depict different things like whales, a condor, spiders, monkeys. There's roughly 10,000 lines, and some of the lines, just the width of one of the lines, can be 30 meters wide. That's really big. And the longest one is a hummingbird, and it's 900 feet long. It's crazy. So it's really hard to see. Why the heck were these things built? Everybody's trying to figure out why. There's all kinds of crazy theories out there. Some people claim that there was ancient astronauts, and that these astronauts created them to mark their way home. Another one of the more popular fringe theories is that there was aliens way back in the day, and these people came in contact with the extraterrestrials, and they later wanted to make markers for their spaceships, and so they created these big pieces of artwork, monkeys and hummingbirds, for them to see and be like, oh, I remember them. They did nice artwork of birds. We will go back. Regardless of what you believe, it was probably created for something up in the sky. One of the most logical theories is that the people believed in a deity in the sky, and that they wanted to show them their artwork, or they wanted to please him with the drawing, and they made that. Really cool. Really strange. Moving on. The Crooked Forest. So there's this grove of pine trees that has a really odd curve shape. And the mystery is, how in the heck did all these trees get this curved shape? Nobody knows to this day. A lot of people like to say it's solved because they're for sure it was a landslide, but a lot of other people don't agree. It's generally thought that people planted these trees in the 1930s, and like whenever they got to a certain age, they bent them over, and then so they just kept growing, and they wanted to use these trees as like either furniture wood or wood for boats, which would have been really cool. Furniture would have been cool too. But then World War II started, and they all left, and they weren't able to get their epic curved trees for their wooden boats and furniture. There's also other theories that gravity works different there. For some reason, I don't know why that's a theory. People just say it. So there's no proof. There's no really reason. They just say gravity works different. Cool. There's this folklore about the trees that a spirit came and bent them over, so some people believe it's a sacred place. Death Valley National Park. This is a national park in California. It is the lowest point in all of North America, and it actually has the hottest temperature on record for anywhere in the entire world at 134 degrees. I was actually there recently. Just last summer we went there, or it was early summer, luckily, and it was very hot. Guys, that place is pretty hot. It's known for different films like Star Wars and Star Wars. They filmed the scene whenever R2-D2 rolled away from C-3PO at the beginning of A New Hope, the original Star Wars. However, other than Star Wars, it has one of the world's strangest phenomenons, or what many people say is one of the world's strangest phenomenons, which is the rocks moving phenomenon, also called sailing stones. These sailing stones is whenever rocks just literally move across the desert, and they could range from just being a few ounces to being hundreds of pounds. A 100-pound rock just, we used to ride these babies for miles. It's really weird. I don't think anybody has actually seen this in person. However, they have caught this on camera in a time lapse, so they're like, we know what it is now. We saw it on a time lapse. It's wind and rain and water, ice. Time lapse proved it. Your magic is destroyed. Your magic is destroyed. Oh my gosh, I'm going insane. But some of the large rocks moved like 1,500 feet, so that's really far. But yeah, the main theory behind what happens is it's the perfect balance of ice, water, and wind. And some people think that aliens moved them, or that the rocks are secretly alive and they move themselves, or perhaps gnomes. I prefer the gnome option. It's a lot more magical, and they keep stealing my socks. I've seen them in my woods lately. I think my cat killed one the other day. Anyways, Fukushima 1. For some reason they named it Fukushima 1 on this map. I will not question the creator. I will just tell you about Fukushima. It was a nuclear accident where after an earthquake and tsunami in 2011, there was like this 9 magnitude earthquake under the sea, which caused a tsunami that was like super tall. It was 46 feet whenever it hit the Fukushima area, and it went right over the seawall, hit the plant, it damaged the nuclear power plant, and then the nuclear core started overheating, which causes huge problems. But yeah, it was pretty bad. It was like rated a number 7, I think, on their scales of disaster. That's rated by some random organization that decided that it was a 7. But yeah, pretty bad. 164,000 people evacuated, but only 1 person died. So that's a win. Not that he died, but that so many people lived. And the guy died of radiation poisoning. A lot of people died from the tsunami, though, and the earthquake. A lot of people. But yeah, out of all the people that stayed back to fix the melting down or the overheating power plant, only 1 dying is pretty cool. There is this story. If you guys like weird stuff that I always talk about, I'll go ahead and tell you. That's why you're watching my video. There's this story about how these people were back at the power plant as it was getting really hot, or when the cores were getting hot, and they went outside for a break, and then Mothman flew down and swooped at them, and then they're like, oh, I don't know if that was Mothman, but I don't even know if this story is real. I think I read it online. Maybe it was made up, but anyways, Mothman was allegedly potentially there, double allegedly, because I'm telling you a story that I read on another story, and they left because they saw Mothman. Moving on, North Sentinel Island. I'm sure you guys have heard of North Sentinel Island. It is, getting into it, it's crazy. It's a lot crazier than I remember it being. So North Sentinel Island is just off the coast of kind of India, kind of Indonesia area, but it's home to the Sentinelese people, who are a tribe of people who have basically been cut off from the rest of the world forever. There were a few crashes next to the island that landed there, like in 1867. There was this crew of Indian merchants that wrecked their ship there. 106 people were stranded on the beach of this island, and they were constantly fighting off the Sentinelese people attacking them, but they were rescued by the Navy, luckily. I guess there was a few other parts of contact, but not really. They're always super angry. In 1977, there was a shipwreck that occurred on the coastal reefs close to there, and their boat crashed and went over to the shore. I think the survivors went off somewhere else, but they went to the boat and they salvaged the steel off that boat, and they were like, oh my gosh. They went from the Stone Age to having steel. And so, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, that's crazy, right? The first time they made friendly contact with this tribe, they had to give them a whole bunch of gifts, and then finally they didn't try to immediately kill them when they got close to them. This was in 1991 because the government was trying to get them to have friendly relations with the Sentinelese people. But overall, they're extremely violent. There was a tsunami in 2004, and so they were trying to figure out if they were wiped out, and a helicopter flew over, and they shot a bunch of arrows at the helicopter and threw spears. There's like a famous picture of that. And then in 2006, there was a couple guys fishing, and they drifted a little bit too close to the island, and they were murdered by those people too. And then it became illegal to get 5 miles within this island. This is the famous place where this 26-year-old missionary from Missouri tried to spread Christianity to them, and they immediately killed him. That is very sad. But yeah, just imagine being cut off from the rest of the world forever, and then you see planes flying over and people on boats that move really fast, and they have wizard devices on their phone, in their hands. Like, they'd be like wizards. I'd I bet they are trying to kill everybody that gets close to them because they think it's, I don't know, bad juju. And then I also think that, like, whenever they said they made friendly relations with them, they also said that, like, they were there just for a second, but if they were there just a little bit too long, they're like, okay, you have to leave, or, you know, whatever they said in their language. They have no idea what they're saying. They don't speak their language at all. But they forced them off the island, like, really quick after they made friendly relations. I'm guessing they feel like, oh, more people on the island, more people to compete for resources. That's a problem. This island's small. It makes sense. Man, imagine if someone told them about Walmart, Christ of the Abyss. So this is just like an 8-foot tall statue of Jesus Christ that has been sunk deep underwater in a few places throughout the world. The original was created in Italy back in 1954. It was sunk 56 feet in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Italy in honor of the first Italian scuba diver. And then there was just 2 more created. The second was created in 1961 off the coast of Grenada and the Caribbean. And the third was cast in 1962 and placed in the Florida Keys. And there's not much else other than that. There's just a whole bunch of statues of Jesus Christ in the ocean. You're welcome. Hagar Quin. This is another megalithic structure. It is a megalithic temple complex located in the Maltan Island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It was built a long time ago. People estimate 36 to 3200 BC. It's possibly just strictly a temple and wasn't used for anything else besides that. They were worshiping some sort of like fertility deity thing because they found this statue of a pregnant woman there, and they're like, they probably were trying to get fertile. That's why they were there. Big brains are out there doing archaeological stuff. But what I like about it is this 17th century Maltese historian wrote a document about how the ruins of Hagar Quin were, I quote, indubitable evidence of the fact that the first inhabitants of Malta were a race of giants. So, case closed. Checkmate. Woo, this is the last one. Agartha. The best one, maybe on the entire iceberg chart. So, Agartha is this theory that there is a massive civilization underneath the earth, and that like it's like a whole bunch of different things, like the earth is hollow or at least extremely cavernous, and that people or something lives inside of earth, like a race of either giants or advanced people or reptilian things. A lot of people think that like Admiral Byrd, which is this American aviator, he flew down into Antarctica and accidentally went into Agartha because he was at the southern pole. And basically he flew to Agartha and he saw it, and then he came out of there and he was like, wow, I saw this. This is so crazy. But then later on he was like briefed that he couldn't tell anybody, and he was like, actually, there's nothing at the South Pole. But people believe that Agartha basically has the magnetic poles reversed, and that they have like lush green grass and a whole ecosystem, animals, potentially dinosaurs. It's a really interesting theory. I'm not going to get too far into it, but it's just like, man, I love the idea of Earth being hollow or somewhat cavernous. You know, it might be impossible for it to be hollow because of the weight of the Earth and whatever the scans. My brain is small for that stuff. What's really crazy about Agartha is that throughout history, different civilizations have talked about trying to find Agartha or trying to go down there, or stories of just people going down into the earth and there being a city there. Throughout Hinduism, there's things like that. Hitler was kind of obsessed with Agartha and that sort of thing for some reason. And there's a few other civilizations that were like not in contact with each other that talked about this advanced civilization that is inside of Earth. So this whole iceberg is very strange. I really have enjoyed doing the intensive research that I did on this. That was kind of brief, but these topics are awesome. I will be continuing with Tier 2 in the next video, hopefully. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys all for getting a lobotomy and removing a small piece of your brain to watch this. If you would like to get a lobotomy also, click that subscribe button and then you will get one. And you're just like me for real. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow in the next one. Not tomorrow. It's probably going to be goodbye.